Take that information that Joe's laying down, go to the recruiting rankings. Just don't go to 1 year. Take a collection of 4 or 5 years. Go to Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, collect all the 5 stars. Then just go down to, again, really good recruiting classes from Auburn, Penn State, Tennessee, Michigan, down at the 10, 11 spots, Notre Dame. Collect all the 5 stars over 5 years. You're going to see a difference. And again, I'm telling people, don't go to the aberrations of, not all the 5 stars panned out. And yes, you can grab Baker Mayfield as a 2 or 3 star and he became a superstar. Yes, go to the collection of the players. You're going to see a difference. And that's where the game changers are typically.
Well, a lot of times people want to look back at certain universities and they want to ask this question, well, why isn't this university any good anymore? And people want to forget in short-term history, some of the players that were on certain teams. You go and you look at Missouri and the players that they had when Missouri was making the run to the SEC championship. And I don't mean, 2015 or 14, whenever they really got destroyed by Auburn, or not Auburn, but Alabama. You go back and you look at that 2013 team that James Franklin was the quarterback of, and you look at the receivers that this team had and how good that offense was, they're not getting that right now. And that's part of the reason why Missouri is struggling. A lot of people want to ask about Will Muschamp. Well, why wasn't Will Muschamp as successful as, if Steve Spurrier can do it at South Carolina, how come Will Muschamp can't? Well, Will Muschamp never got Jadeveon Clowney to go to South Carolina. And that is one of those players that is a 5-star difference maker. And you can look at what he did his last season at South Carolina, but also as you're watching a football game, and I don't mean you're walking around, you're talking to your friends, you got yourself some chips and dip and you're enjoying everything and you're gnawing on a wing while an offense is going on. I mean, actually go back and watch and count how many times a defense or an offense actually strategized to go to the opposite way of Jadeveon Clowney, because that's how big of a difference maker he was for South Carolina. And those South Carolina teams that were going, and the one that went to the SEC championship in 2010, look at how many good players were on that, and especially your 1 or 2 difference makers like your Jadeveon Clowney. Those are the ones that put you from good to great and from great to elite. And if they're choosing your Georgias, your LSUs, your Alabamas, and not going to Tennessee, Auburn, or Florida, then there's a difference. The thing now is, these players that are in Florida are starting to stay in Florida, and you're going to see that even more recruiting-wise with the way that Dan Mullen and the attitude that he is bringing to the Florida Gators, because now they're not just winning because Will Muschamp won at Florida. He just won differently. It wasn't the same fun and gun offense that we saw in the 90s with Florida, or in the late 2000s and early 2010s with Urban Meyer. Dan Mullen is winning like that because Dan Mullen was the offensive coordinator for Urban Meyer. And that's where you're seeing this pass-happy offense. And that's why, even though they've played the same amount of football games, Trask has 12 more touchdown passes than what Mac Jones does, because when Trask gets into the red zone, he still passes the football, where Mac Jones hands it off to Najee Harris, and he has Najee Harris as one of the best running backs in the country.
As soon as you mentioned Missouri, I thought of 2 positions going back to that 2012 to 2015 range. I thought wide receivers, as you just mentioned, and I thought DNs. Yep. Tony Ely, Shane Ray, Marcus Golden, all impact players in the NFL.
Yep.
That's where they were stacking up too, and making just disrupting offenses and making life miserable for quarterbacks.
But that was Barry Odom, and people forget how good Barry Odom was as a defensive coordinator for Missouri, because when everybody remembers what he did as the head coach once he got named that after the unfortunate stuff with health that happened with Missouri. But Barry Odom now, look at what Arkansas is doing, and look at, you take away from this past weekend, which honestly Arkansas played tremendous in that game against Florida. Just they are a football team that doesn't have the skill players and doesn't have the defense like what Florida does. Florida's team right now is built on, we're going to throw up 35 to 40 points. And if our defense can hold you to 28, we're winning every single football game. And if they don't, then we lose. And that's exactly what happened with them losing to Texas A&M. Kellen Mond is two different quarterbacks on the road than what he is at home. I joke that he's just like good Bo and bad Bo that we saw with Ole Miss. Is if he's at home, he is an outstanding quarterback. And that's the quarterback that Auburn's going to see if that game does get played as scheduled in a couple of weeks. And Kellen Mond is a quarterback that can beat you at home, and that's where Florida played him, was inside of Texas A&M at College Station in front of 20% of their crowd. That was not 20% of their crowd whatsoever. So, that's where the SEC is all about neutral sites, home and away, who's better, who's not. Texas A&M is a great football team this year. And because of the way Jimbo Fisher now is starting to show, hey, look, I can win with my style of play if I have a good quarterback. Kellen Mond is having a great year, and Texas A&M is having a great year. Georgia, good season, but their quarterback and Stennett is not the great quarterback that's going to get them to the SEC championship in the college football playoff like we've seen in the past. And that's the reason why right now it's all about Florida and Alabama, even though we still have almost a month left of the season.